Dad smirked and said. You didn't belong there anyway. After they used my money for a luxury cruise. I smiled and cancelled everything right in front of them. Now they're desperate. I stood there, staring at my parents in disbelief. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, my knuckles turning white. You cancelled my trip? My voice came out quieter than I expected, but there was no mistaking the edge in it. My father smirked, leaning back in his chair like he had just won a game only he knew we were playing. You didn't belong there anyway, he said, sipping his coffee as if this was just another ordinary morning. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. My mother sat across from him, her lips pursed in that same guilty expression she always wore when she went along with his schemes but didn't want to take the full blame. You used my money, I said slowly, letting the words sink in. My mother had the audacity to sigh. Oh, don't be so dramatic, she said, waving a hand. It's just a trip. We figured you'd understand. Understand. That was the word she always used when they did something awful and expected me to roll over and take it. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I had spent years saving up for that trip, my dream vacation. I had picked out everything, the flights, the hotel, the excursions. It was supposed to be my break, my escape from all the years of putting them first. And now they had spent it. On themselves. I clenched my jaw. So where are you going? My dad chuckled, pushing his chair back and standing up. Somewhere nice, he said. First-class flights, luxury cruise, all-inclusive. You wouldn't have fit in, son. It's not your scene. My mother stood too, patting my arm like I was a child who had just lost a toy. Really, honey, you'll get over it. That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I forced a smile, nodding like I had finally come to my senses. You know what? You're right, I said, my voice eerily calm. I could already feel their relief. They thought I was backing down, accepting it like I always did. But they had made one fatal mistake. They booked everything under my name. And they had no idea what I was about to do. I pulled out my phone right in front of them. My fingers moved quickly, navigating through my email until I found the confirmation details for the trip. Oh, look at that, I mused, tilting the screen slightly so they could see it. Your flights. Your cruise. Your little getaway. I tapped the screen. All booked under my name. My mother's smile twitched. My father's smirk faded just slightly. I let out a small chuckle. You know, I should probably double-check everything. You know, just to be sure it's all in order. I tapped the airline app first. The itinerary popped up in an instant. First-class tickets, just like he bragged about. Non-refundable? Sure. But cancelable? Absolutely. With one press of a button, I wiped them out. A red notification flashed at the top of the screen. Your cancellation request has been processed. My mother gasped. What are you doing? I barely spared her a glance as I moved to the cruise website. They had gone all out, an extravagant suite, prepaid excursions, luxury dining packages. I tapped through the options one by one. Cancel. Refund request submitted. The color drained from my father's face. You wouldn't dare, he said, his voice suddenly losing that smug confidence. I turned the screen toward him, letting him watch as I clicked the last cancellation confirmation. Too late. He lunged for my phone, but I pulled it back just in time. Nope, I said, shaking my head. You see, Dad, I do belong there. Because I paid for it. And since you made the mistake of booking everything in my name, you just gave me full control. My mother's hands flew to her mouth. But what about us? We have to be at the airport in a few hours. I shrugged. Guess you'll have to find your own way. My father's nostrils flared. You selfish little. Selfish? I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. Selfish is stealing from your own son and expecting him to just take it. I saw his fists clench, his eyes burning with fury. But I wasn't finished yet. I opened my banking app again, scrolling until I found the charge from the cruise line. I tapped dispute transaction and flagged it as fraudulent. My mother let out a strangled noise. No. No, no, no. Oh, and just so you know, I continued, when you book with a luxury cruise line and then have your payments flagged for fraud, they tend to blacklist you from future bookings. My father turned an alarming shade of red. You little. I held up a finger, silencing him. Careful, Dad. You don't want to say something you'll regret. He seethed, fists clenched at his sides. My mother's voice shook. How could you do this to us? I smiled. You did it to yourselves. They were supposed to leave in a few hours. And now, they had no flights, no cruise, and no way to get their stolen money back. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. My mother frantically grabbed her phone, her fingers shaking as she tried to call the airline. There has to be a way to fix this, she muttered. Maybe they can rebook us, maybe. Maybe you can pay for it yourselves, I said flatly. She shot me a desperate look. You know we can't afford that. I crossed my arms. Then maybe you should have thought about that before stealing my money. My father stood rigid, his jaw tight. You ungrateful little. I smiled, tilting my head. What's that, Dad? Speak up. I want to hear what you have to say now. He gritted his teeth but said nothing. The panic in my mother's eyes was growing. She scrolled furiously through her emails, probably searching for some loophole, some way to undo what I'd done. But there was none. Their vacation was over before it even began. And they knew it. The room was deathly silent, except for the frantic tapping of my mother's fingers against her phone screen. My father stood there, seething, his face getting redder by the second. You really think this is funny? He finally growled. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Oh, hilarious, actually. Watching you two scramble after trying to screw me over? It's the best entertainment I've had in years. My mother's eyes snapped up to me, glistening with desperation. We just thought, she stammered. We didn't think you'd react this way. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? How did you think I'd react? Thank you for robbing me blind? It wasn't robbery, she said quickly, wringing her hands. It was borrowing. We were going to tell you eventually. I scoffed. Right. After you were sipping cocktails on a private balcony, thousands of miles away? Spare me. My father exhaled sharply through his nose. You've always been selfish. He spat. Always holding on to your money like you're better than us. I laughed outright at that. Oh, you mean the money I earned? The money I saved while you two spent every dime you've ever touched? I shook my head. I've been bailing you out for years. Bills, groceries, your car repairs, everything. And this? This was the final straw. My mother sniffled. We needed this trip. We haven't had a break in years. I stared at her in disbelief. And you think I have? When was the last time I had a vacation, Mom? Oh, right, never. Because I was too busy making sure you two didn't drown in your own debt. My father slammed his fist on the table. You owe us, boy. Something in me snapped. Owe you? I repeated, my voice calm, but cold. You're right. I did owe you. I owed you loyalty, respect, and care, until you threw all of that away. Now? I owe you nothing. The weight of my words settled over them. My mother sank into a chair, looking like she might actually cry. My father just stared at me, his expression unreadable. I took a deep breath and turned toward the door. Oh, and one last thing, I said, pausing. I flagged every transaction as fraudulent. That money? It's coming back to me. My mother gasped. My father's nostrils flared. I smiled. Have a great trip. And with that I walked out. I expected the phone calls to start immediately. They didn't. Instead I got silence. No frantic texts, no angry voicemails. Just nothing. At first, it was unsettling. My parents weren't the type to back down easily, especially after losing something they thought was guaranteed. But as the hours passed, I realized what was happening. They were scrambling. They were probably calling the airline, the cruise line, the credit card company, anyone who would listen. Trying to undo what I had done. But there was nothing to undo. Because, unlike them, I played by the rules. Every cancellation was legitimate. Every refund request was backed by clear proof of fraud. I hadn't done anything shady. I had just taken back what was mine. And they knew it. By the next morning, my phone finally lit up. "Mom, we need to talk. Call me." I smirked. Ignored it. 10 minutes later, another one. "Mom, please, sweetheart. We made a mistake. Let's fix this." Still ignored. Then came the anger. "Dad, you entitled brat. You're ruining everything. You're punishing us for no reason. Fix this now." I laughed. Block. I wasn't their personal bank anymore. And they were just beginning to understand what that meant. By the afternoon, the floodgates burst open. Blocked numbers. Private calls. Emails. Even texts from distant relatives who had no business getting involved. My mother was trying every angle she could think of. "Mom, we know you're upset, but we can talk about this. We can make it right." Then, an hour later. "Mom, this is childish, honey. You can't just cut us off like this. We're your parents." Ah, there it was. The guilt trip. Then my father chimed in. "Dad, you think this is funny? You think ruining our vacation makes you smart? You have no idea what you've done." That one made me chuckle. Oh, I knew exactly what I had done. I had taken back control. For years I had been their safety net, the reliable, responsible son who would always be there to clean up their messes. And for years I had let them get away with it. Until now. I stretched out on my couch, scrolling through the messages, watching their panic unfold. The best part? I hadn't even gotten to the final blow yet. Because getting my money back wasn't enough. They needed to feel this. I opened the cruise line's customer portal one last time. Sure enough, their entire reservation was flagged as fraudulent activity due to the chargeback. That meant not only was their trip gone, but their ability to book future luxury vacations was now blacklisted. I grinned. Then I went a step further. Since they had used my identity to book everything, I had access to the travel insurance they purchased for the trip. It covered cancellations, but only for the original account holder. Which was me. I filed the necessary paperwork, attached all the required documentation, and within minutes, I got an automated email confirming that my claim was approved. Translation? Not only did I get my money back, but I now had a fresh travel credit under my name. So I did what any rational person would do. I booked my own dream vacation. First-class flights. 5-star hotels. Exclusive excursions. Everything they had planned for themselves I now had, but better. I smiled to myself as I hit confirm booking. And when my mother called one last time, her name flashing across my screen in a final, desperate attempt to guilt me into fixing what they had done, I let it ring. Then I turned off my phone. They could sit in their mess. I had a trip to pack for. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls. My phone was flooded with texts, emails, everything short of a smoke signal. "Mom, please call me. We can figure this out. Dad, you absolute disgrace. I can't believe you do this to your own parents." Then, from my aunt, who I barely spoke to. "Aunt Linda, sweetie, your mom is really upset. She says you took all their money and left them stranded? This isn't like you. Call her." Ah. So now they were trying to flip the story and play the victims. Classic. I ignored them all and went about my morning. I made myself coffee, turned on some music, and casually started packing for my trip. It wasn't until noon that my doorbell rang. I didn't even have to check the peephole. I knew who it was. I opened the door to find my mother standing there, her eyes puffy like she'd been crying all night. My father was behind her, arms crossed, his face twisted with barely contained rage. "John!" My mother started, forcing a shaky smile. "Sweetheart, let's talk." I leaned against the doorframe, completely calm. "Talk about what? How you stole my money and are now upset that you got caught?" Her face crumpled. "It wasn't stealing," she insisted. "We needed that trip. We've been so stressed and… You needed it? I cut in, my voice sharp. I needed that money, Mom. I spent years saving for that trip. It was supposed to be mine. My father scoffed. Oh, boo-hoo. Life isn't fair. Get over it. I smiled. Yeah? Well, either is getting blacklisted from luxury cruises for fraud. The color drained from his face. What the hell are you talking about? I folded my arms. Oh, didn't you check your email? The cruise company doesn't take kindly to fraudulent charges. Not only is your trip cancelled, but they flagged your account. Hope you weren't planning any more luxury getaways anytime soon. My mother gasped. No. No, no, no. She fumbled for her phone, frantically checking her inbox. I could hear her sharp intake of breath when she saw the notification. My father's nostrils flared. You little… Careful, I warned, tilting my head. You really don't want to say something you'll regret. His fist clenched, but he stayed silent. I smiled. Anyway, I'd love to keep chatting, but I have to finish packing. My mother blinked. Packing? Yeah, I said, stretching lazily. Since the travel credit was under my name, I'd booked myself a nice little vacation. 5-star resorts, first-class flights. Oh, and I even upgraded the excursions. Thought I'd splurge a little. She let out a small, strangled noise. You used our trip? My father barked. Correction, I said, smirking. I used my money. You just tried to use it first. My mother looked like she might actually collapse. John, please. We don't have the money to rebook anything. We… Sounds like a you problem, I said, stepping back into my house. Have a great week. And with that, I shut the door in their faces. I stood there for a moment, listening to my mother whimper and my father curse under his breath. They lingered for a minute before storming off, still muttering about how I had ruined their trip. I just shook my head, smiling to myself. Let them be mad. I had a vacation to enjoy. I arrived at the airport feeling lighter than I had in years. While my parents were likely sulking at home, I was checking into my first-class flight, sipping a complimentary drink, and scrolling through my perfectly confirmed travel itinerary. As I waited at my gate, my phone buzzed again. Mom, John, please, we don't have the money to rebook anything. We were counting on this trip. Just call me. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I turned my phone off. No more guilt. No more manipulation. No more fixing their mistakes. As the boarding call echoed through the terminal, I smiled, grabbed my bag, and walked toward the jet bridge. They had stolen my dream trip. And now, I was taking it back. The moment I stepped onto the plane and into my first-class seat, I knew I had won. A flight attendant greeted me with a warm smile, offering me a glass of champagne before takeoff. I accepted it gladly, sinking into my spacious seat as other passengers shuffled into economy. This was what I had worked for. I glanced out the window, imagining my parents sitting at home, stewing in their anger and regret. They had been so sure they could take what was mine without consequence. So sure I would just roll over and accept it. They had no idea I had stopped being their doormat the second they stole from me. As the plane taxied down the runway, my thoughts drifted to the resort waiting for me. 5-star accommodations, breathtaking ocean views, luxurious spa treatments, everything they had wanted for themselves. And now? It was all mine. By the time I arrived at my destination, the stress of the past few days had melted away. The second I stepped into the resort's grand lobby, a concierge greeted me by name, handing me a cool towel and a tropical drink. Welcome, Mr. Reynolds, she said with a warm smile. Your suite is ready for you. We've also confirmed your private island excursion for tomorrow morning. Would you like to add anything else to your itinerary? I couldn't help but grin. This was everything I had dreamed of. I spent the next few days indulging in every single thing my parents had planned for themselves, only better. Fine dining? I ordered the most expensive dishes on the menu. Spa treatments? I booked extra sessions, just because I could. Excursions? I upgraded every single one, making sure I got the full VIP experience. And the best part? I did it all while my parents were stuck at home, furious and helpless. On the third day of my trip, I finally checked my phone, curiosity getting the better of me. As expected, dozens of missed calls. Messages filled with a desperate mix of anger, guilt-tripping, and begging. Mom, you can't just ignore us forever. We're your parents. Dad, enjoy your little vacation, you ungrateful brat. Just know you'll regret this one day. Mom, again please, just help us fix this. We can talk when you get back. I smirked, snapped a picture of my oceanfront view, and sent them a single text back. Wish you were here. Oh wait. Then? I turned my phone off again. Let them sit in their misery. I had a paradise to enjoy. By the time my vacation ended, I had never felt more at peace. I had spent my days lounging on pristine beaches, indulging in gourmet meals, and exploring breathtaking landscapes. Every moment felt like a victory, not just because of the luxury, but because I had finally freed myself from the weight of my parents' manipulation. As I packed my bags, I checked my phone one last time. More messages. More calls. But the tone had shifted. No more anger. No more demands. Just silence from my father, and one last message from my mother. John, I don't know what to say anymore. We just wanted something nice for ourselves. We didn't think you would do this to us. I hope one day you understand. I did understand. That was the problem. I understood that they would never take responsibility. Never apologize. Never admit they were wrong. And that was the moment I knew. I wasn't just taking back my vacation. I was taking back my life. As I boarded my flight home, I deleted their messages, blocked their numbers, and leaned back in my seat with a satisfied sigh. They had made their choice. And I had made mine. I was done. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free.